The true problem of Beethoven. When we listen to Beethoven's music, the first thing that undoubtedly comes to mind is this music. Powerful, immortal. But what if we told you that Beethoven's true problem was not his loss of hearing, but something much deeper, something he truly struggled against his entire life? I'm Jakob Vinyas, and this is the second episode of The Music of Your Life. To truly understand the extent of this problem, we need to go back to Beethoven's paternal grandfather, whose name was Ludwig van Beethoven. Beethoven's grandfather was of Flemish origin, from a region in Flanders that today is Belgium, but back then was known as the Spanish Netherlands, or the Southern Netherlands. This Flemish origin explains the Van Beethoven instead of von Beethoven, which would have been more appropriate since Beethoven was born in Bonn. In any case, both Van and von in Germany did not imply any noble lineage, but simply indicated a place of origin. Ludwig van Beethoven, the grandfather, was a great musician, especially as a conductor and performer. He served as Kapellmeister, that is, chapel master, under the rule of Prince Elector Clement Augustus of Bavaria. His son, Johann, the father of our composer, was born in Bonn in 1740 and was also a professional musician, obtaining a position in the same court of the Electorate of Cologne, in this case a much lower rank, as one of the tenors in the choir. From this period, we already have records of his struggles with alcohol. Johann also had conflicts with his father. Ludwig van Beethoven, the grandfather, not only regarding his musical abilities, but also later on due to his marriage. We have interesting information from this time. A court advisor reported that Johann occasionally locked his son Ludwig in a basement for long periods as punishment. There are also accounts of him pulling Ludwig out of bed by force to make him play music all night without rest, parading him before some of his friends and acquaintances whom he wanted to impress. However, every time Ludwig made a mistake or played poorly, Johann would exclaim in front of everyone that his son, Ludwig, was the shame of the family. Here, I must make an important point. If we imagine that Johann's father, Ludwig's grandfather, was an important and recognized musician at court, and that back then it was common to push children to follow in their parents' professional footsteps, it's almost certain that Johann himself suffered intense pressure from his father to follow in his footsteps and secure a respectable position. What we mean is that this pressure was passed down from Ludwig's grandfather to his father Johann, and then from Johann to Ludwig, with Johann persisting in his effort to make Ludwig a child prodigy from a very young age, the next Mozart. In the years that followed, Ludwig was subjected to endless practice sessions and cruel, abusive methods. Later on, Johann continued to wake Ludwig in the middle of the night to make him play. This time, however, in front of his drunken friends. If Ludwig made mistakes, the consequences included beatings and humiliation. Due to Johann's alcoholism, his voice deteriorated, and after the death of his wife in 1787, he fell into a deep depression that left him unable to work. But Ludwig's family problems didn't end there. At the age of 17, he found himself responsible for taking care of his two younger brothers and his father, who was sick, depressed, and an alcoholic. Consumed by alcohol, Johann, Ludwig's father, died in 1792, when Ludwig was 22 years old. But the emotional scars from the abuse he endured stayed with him for the rest of his life. In fact, we are all, in some way, the product of our destiny. By destiny, we mean the family we are born into, the country, the language, the culture, the traditions, our genetics. The result of all this is also evident. We also know about Beethoven's profound respect for Mozart and his work. A young 17-year-old Beethoven traveled to Vienna, hoping to meet and study with Mozart. However, it's doubtful that he ever managed to contact Mozart. First, because Beethoven had to return quickly to Bonn due to his mother's serious illness, and second, because Mozart, in 1787, was traveling to Prague for the premiere of his Don Giovanni. Without a doubt, Beethoven carried an obsession throughout his life with comparing himself to and trying to surpass Mozart. Mozart, who was cheerful and optimistic by nature, was capable of feats such as composing a symphony in 4 days, or an opera in just a few weeks. As you can see, he composed flawlessly, without even needing drafts or revisions, because, as he himself explained, I spend all day thinking about music, so when I sit down to write it, it's already complete in my head. Beethoven, on the other hand, whose gruff and bad-tempered nature was well known, needed countless drafts and sketches. There's no doubt that Beethoven is one of the most important composers in history, but as we've seen, his talent was forged primarily in the shadows of a miserable and unhappy childhood, and in a constant yearning to try to reach his idol, Mozart. I am pleased to present my version of the well-known melody composed in 2005 by Norwegian composer Rolf Løvland. It is a piece that effectively combines elements of classical music, Celtic music, and even what is known as New Age. In this case, it primarily uses the minor mode to create this melancholic effect. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed it, because in the next episode we'll have a surprise.